I'd like to welcome you again to videos associated with HS 314 and specifically the business planning component. And we're addressing the Ned Saunders case study. And Ned, as you're aware from reading the case and seeing other videos, has a number of issues. And I'm here again with Albert E. Gibbons, president of AEG Financial, and CLU CHFC, distinguished AEP, and someone I've known for many years and really an expert at process. And in previous videos, we've discussed some of the technical things, some of the process. And now we're at a point where we have to take Ned that one step forward. We're taking the dip into the pool, and we're going to do something with a life insurance trust, which is one of my recommendations all the time in a case like this. If you aren't here tomorrow, but there's a pile of money managed by a trustee that can do a lot of flexible things like take care of the surviving spouse, equalize the estate, provide liquidity, that's good. We also have to take some steps initially before we can get anywhere with this business. We're going to need appraisal, because if it's going to be sold, if we're going to buy out the capital investors, we're going to sell it to the next generation, or we're going to gift it to the next generation, it's going to start with appraisal. But along that process, a lot of things have been placed in front of Ned. Installment sales, sales to defective trust, GRATs, a lot of different procedures which are going to involve the other advisors. And now we have to take these steps. And Al, I know how good you are at pushing the process along with advisors, and I'd like you to describe for our audience how we make these steps and how we make sure things get done, and how critical and the ethical dilemma that we face here. So why don't you tell our students what you think?
Ted, it's nice to be with you again. Thanks for inviting me. Okay, so we talked previously about the process and about collaboration, and now we're sort of really into the meat of the thing, right? And it's very important that there's a platform of mutual respect among the advisors. I mean, that is really an important issue, that they trust one another, that they're qualified, they know the things they're supposed to know, they're specialists in their areas, and that they actually have a spirit of working together and trying to do what's right. There can't be too much ego invested. You sort of have to check your ego at the door and make sure that you're sort of putting out your recommendations and having them vetted by other members of the team. We all have biases. And there have been books written on this, and there are articles written on it all the time, that we all bring sort of our baggage or our perspective to the table. And I'm a life insurance expert, and I love what I do, and I love what our products can bring to the table. That makes me very enthusiastic and perhaps biased, perhaps. So if I really am serious about getting the right solution for the client, then I'm willing to put it out there and have it vetted. Is this the right solution? Is it too much insurance? Is it not enough? Is it the right kind? Is it owned properly? Or all the issues that revolve around those things. So that's true of any of the specialists that are at the table, though. So if we're going to recommend GRATs, I mean, we want to make sure that we're looking at the assumptions and we're looking at the modeling and that we have the appropriate assets. Everybody around the table can have some input to that. If we're looking at a sale to a defective grantor trust, these are really complicated transactions. So all of the assumptions are important, and all of the modeling is important, and then the empowerment of the client. So in a process like this, where there are so many issues and so many potential solutions, it would really be good, I think, if the advisors, with the permission of the client, can sort of work out the issues sort of behind the scenes and vet different possibilities and model different possibilities and all sort of bring their expertise to the table. And if they can come up with sort of a consensus plan, that will really help give confidence to the client, I think. Then it's a question of explaining and doing, and then getting the go-ahead to actually implement. So that's sort of the process leading up to implementation. There is no way that any single advisor can do this alone. Again, we're back to those silos. There's no way that I, as a life insurance professional, can recommend and implement a life insurance solution without coordinating with the other professionals on the team to make sure that I have the right ownership, to make sure that I have the right beneficiary designation. You know, Ted, on almost every life insurance case that I work on, and it doesn't have to be this complicated. It can be a personal life insurance or estate planning case that I've been called in to work on. I would never think of not checking with the attorney to make sure that we have the appropriate ownership and beneficiary designations on that case, that it coordinates with all the other planning that's been done. And that's exactly where we are here. You know, we've all heard about the mistakes out there that where things don't get done, for example. So, you know, we're going to do this great buy-sell agreement, and it's never signed. That to me, I don't know if there's legal liability there, but there's moral, ethical, professional liability there. There's personal liability, I would feel. I mean, where's the integrity if those documents don't get signed? And you've seen that in your practice, and,
Sure.
and I've seen it, and it's terrible. Or in the old split dollar regimes, where someone once told me, it may have been you, Ted, that of all the ones that you've seen, 90% of them were not managed properly. That's terrible. Those are the promises that we're making to clients. And no professional should sleep at night until all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, and everything should be transparent out there. I can't say it any more passionately than that. It's a big thing for me, Ted.
Let's get specific here, and I know your passion on this, and you're absolutely correct. And you know what? From an attorney's point of view, I love it when somebody like you is in the case, and the reason is I know I'm going to get paid. If you look at my basic agenda, people will pay you when they get things done.
Right.
If things drag on, and the client loses motivation or loses trust of the advisors, we don't get paid.
Right.
And that's and this is why we do what we do. We have to make a living. But let's say we have this case, and we have Ned, and we have a need for a life insurance trust. Take us through how you coordinate type of insurance, amount of insurance. There's going to be a life insurance trust. There's going to be some really unusual issues in this case about creating flexibility in this trust. And the attorney's going to need answers, and let's take those steps. How do we get Ned from where he is now? Doesn't have the right kind of insurance, doesn't have it owned properly, not going to be helpful to solve his problem. Needs insurance, going to be a type, going to be an amount, and then it needs to be in a trust, which either is going to involve a trust department, an attorney. Take us through that. How do you get that done?
Yeah, so there are obviously issues that have to be worked out in terms of the process. So once we know there's a problem, and we've sort of figured that out on the first meeting, maybe, we know there's a problem. And the advisors are looking maybe at the existing insurance, and they know it's not appropriately owned. It doesn't
adequate.
And inadequate, right?
Right.
So we know that we're going to do some insurance probably. So we need, for example, to get the client examined on a no-risk basis for the client. He doesn't have to commit at this point, but I need to get him examined, so while we're discussing the other issues, that can be done. If you wait and wait and wait, then it never gets done. So I would say probably 10 to 90% of the situations that I work on, at the end of the first meeting, the client agrees to take an insurance physical, or the clients, you know, if it's husband and wife, will take insurance agreements, and then the advisors keep working through the stuff. Again, if the client had died last night, what would we be discussing today? And so now we're looking at the individual situations. What are we going to do in terms of buy-sell? You know, maybe it's not the perfect solution that I would want to enter into today, but if I had been in a car accident last night, would it be better than what we have? And can we build some flexibility? And I think that word flexibility is really important that you brought up in the question, because when you're dealing with a 60-year-old who's actively involved in building a very successful business, he's not ready to walk. And so this is evolutionary. We're going to need flexibility built in. And that's why you need flexibility in the insurance plan. You need flexibility in the drafting that the attorney is going to do. You need the input of the accountant on what the income tax very often is going to be in terms of the transaction or entities. If we're going to be transferring some stuff, we definitely need a valuation expert in there. He or she doing the appraisal needs to know why it's being done and for what purpose it's being done. So there's guides, and who engages that person? Is it the attorney or is it the client? Do we have confidentiality in some cases and not in other cases? You know, all the issues that go on sort of that make this very complicated, but just go to prove that you can't do it alone. And too many people try to do it alone. They try to sneak in and do whatever they're going to do and maintain control of the client, and it's never a good ending in that situation.
I think you're being a little humble, Al, having had experience with you. And the point of leaving the meeting, I know that you don't provide much input when they might be talking about the valuation of the business or the documents. You obviously are talking when there's issues about insurance, and then hopefully people like me are listening and thinking about what we need to do. But at the end of the meeting, I know what you do. You look at everybody and say, here's what you have to do, here's your next step, and tell us that process.
Yeah, so
I know I'm getting an email the next morning.
Yes, that's right. So did I hear this correctly? This is the way we're going to proceed. These are the issues that are outstanding. This is what you need to do and what you need to do and what I need to do. And I'll summarize with your permission, with the permission of the client, with Ned's permission, I'd like to put down sort of a summary of the meeting. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page. And please, if you have comments or corrections or whatever it might be, or additions, please reply to all. That way we'll all stay on the same page. We won't do the one-off stuff. Is that okay with everybody? And that's sort of the process. And you're right, I don't practice law. I have great respect for the other professionals that I work with. Do you occasionally run into some other professionals who might not know what they're supposed to know? You do. Oh. And you occasionally run into professionals who are not very cooperative. That can be an issue. So you have to sort of work around those. It can be worked around. I had a situation recently that I was in a case very much like Ned's, where there were massive issues and massive planning done. I found out at one point that another professional was trying to do his own analysis of insurance as sort of a one-off and not collaborating with the rest of the team. I have to tell you, I had a conversation with the client. And I said, because we were ready to move forward, he said, well, what about these other comments? I said, what comments? And we find out there's some things going on behind. I told the client, I said, you know, I really don't like that. You know, we all had an agreement that we'd have everything in writing to everybody on the table, you know, on the table and transparent. And the client understood. And, you know, we sort of got it straightened out. And as it turned out, the other advisor really didn't know anything about insurance. But I think it was more of a power play or personality issue that was going on. So sometimes those things happen, but I think that's infrequent. I don't think that happens a lot. You can work around those issues. So everybody has to have their walking orders. Now remember, the other thing that we did is we said, how long do you want this process to take? And the client said 60, 90, 120 days. You know, usually they say by year end. So let's have this all wrapped up. So there is a deadline. There is a framework, a time frame in which the other advisors have to perform. And if they don't, it's a problem.
Al, I appreciate you coming here and providing your years of experience and obviously numerous successes in solving problems for people like Ned. And love the way you give back all the time. And thank you again for coming in.
Thanks, Ted, a pleasure.